Hey goblins, I kind of messed up the video quality for this video and the next podcast, so bear with me. I'm still learning. Why am I so nervous? I hate this. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Goblin Salvage Rights, podcast about TTRPGs, mainly Pathfinder Second Edition. I'm Robert.
I'm Erik.
And today's topic is exploration mode.
Exploration mode. What is exploration mode? Well, it's when you explore and you're not hitting things over the head, I think.
Yeah, but before we dive right into the topic, let's talk about some games we played recently.
Oh, so what you just did there is an exploration mode activity, isn't it? We're not ready for initiative.
I'm exploring our other options.
Okay, all right, that's good. Well, tell me about these options. What do you got going on?
Okay, so it's been about a year since we recorded our last series of podcasts. We're in the reel now. Yeah. So every one of the podcasts you're going to be seeing are episodes that we actually recorded almost about 2 weeks ago, which is pretty cool.
These are like time capsules.
Little tiny time capsules. So yeah, I guess I'll start out with talking about some games I played recently. My last game I played was with you for Edgewatch.
Yeah, I was there.
It was freaking sweet. We did like a little in-between book session, I guess. You want to talk more about that?
Yeah. And for all you folks out there, I'm notoriously self-conscious about my games. It usually takes me about a 24-hour cooldown period after running one to, come back out into public. So let's see. Edgewatch. We're between books 1 and 2 at this point. Everybody completed the final boss fight.
Mm-hmm. Completed is strong word.
Do we care about spoilers and getting too?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. So basically, every one of these books has a big bad guy in charge. You know that's no secret. They made it through that, almost got a total party kill,
and the BBEG escaped.
And the BBEG escaped because when you split the party going into that final boss fight,
that wasn't the smartest.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. Pretty awesome for me. So I ended up having to run something between the books because I hadn't read book 2 yet. And most of it was by the seat of my pants, and it felt all kinds of awkward. And like I was just filling in blank spaces as quickly as I could.
I thought it was cool though. I mean, we have two players at the table who are like really focused on the story of the game. They like contribute to the Obsidian portal and stuff like that. So they're really invested. And then there's like me.
What does that mean, Robert?
Who'd like text you during the game what my backstory. So Erik did a scene for everyone at the table, where it was just kind of like a one-on-one.
Yeah, like an opening scene establishing.
Yeah. And I like texted you the scene during
and I had no idea this was going on.
Yeah. I'm notorious for wanting to change my class and character every book of an
all
AP
the time.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I just get bored mechanically with characters.
Yep. Problem.
But I really love the story and the background that you've just forced on my character, which is it's so out of left field. I was totally not expecting it. And I really love it now. So I've switched from investigator to wizard, and I'm trying to make that work in the realm of the story.
Yeah.
But I'm going to stick with wizard. I'm not. Dragrid is either going to die, and I play a new character if Dragrid dies, basically. And I'm hoping that Dragrid doesn't die. Yeah. So
I don't
know.
Going
wizard, and that's it.
Dragrid's going to be some kind of like occultist by the end of this next book or something like that. Maybe an oracle.
That'd be kind of cool.
It's kind of like a Scooby-Doo episode where we rip off Dragrid's mask and it turned out, he was a bard the whole time.
The hobgoblin just has these class masks. And then I guess the other game that I want to talk about is my game. I've been running a game.
Yeah, how's that been going? You've got remind me what you're doing, an undead series in Geb.
So I've got 2 games running. I've got our Wednesday game that's every week, and that's where I'm DMing and the players are basically all undead creatures, and they're kind of schmucks of the Geb world, and they witness something that really changes the landscape of Galorian completely.
Yeah, I was there. We're really schmucky.
It's awesome. But then my other game was supposed to be this Erasni focused idea where all the players are evil, but they follow the same god, so they don't kill each other. And
That's right.
that actually kind of just fell apart, mainly because, it had to do a lot with my scheduling issues. I think I wasn't really able to commit to an every other week.
The problem in our hobby.
Yeah. Every other week DM schedule where I do a lot of gigs. I'm a freelance filmmaker and editor. If you're looking for someone to edit your content online or offline, hit me up. But yeah, so my work schedule is really busy on the weekends, especially because of deadlines. So I'm just not able to run 2 games, one of which gets played on every other Saturday. That and my players.
It's almost like you're a
really
fully functioning adult and don't have time to just game all the time.
I don't have time to run.
Luckily, I am not a fully functioning adult, and I was able to run a Disney game last week in addition to my PF2E duty.
Yeah. That was pretty rad too.
Yeah.
That was fucking crazy, actually.
Super quick segue, and I promise you we'll get to what this episode is actually about. Robert's lovely girlfriend, Alanka, has a Disney thing. She just loves Disney. Fortunately, I do too. So I ran a PF2E game set in 1999 San Francisco, and everybody was a Disney character supporting Maleficent, who lost her wings in a tragic car accident on the Bay Bridge coming out of Oakland.
What did you call it? It was Dis Noir.
It's a Disney noir, and because I'm cheesy that way, I shortened it to Dis Noir. TM. So
it was fucking crazy. Our friend Gabby was playing Tigger as like this meth head drug addict.
Yeah.
Which was, I was not expecting. Who could have expected that? You know what I mean? Like that was just so left field.
It is Gabby, so we can expect that.
That's true, actually.
Which Disney character speaks in all caps? It's that one.
Yeah, Gabby is the friend in our group who speaks in all caps in all of our chats. And then
there was she was running around with Eeyore and Piglet in their shitty little car. Tigger had a night job twirling signs in front of a gas station.
That's right.
I played. It's only been a week, and I totally forgot what it was everybody played.
Yeah,
what were you doing?
Kronk.
Kronk from Emperor's New Groove, right?
Yeah, and he was a ranger. His evil other half, I guess, had been aged or something like that. She's like in the hospital or like a care facility.
Oh, Yzma. Yeah, she's just old now. Yeah, it's been so long, and she's in a nursing care facility.
So
what hasn't happened yet, and this is a cool little spoiler, is her roommate got kicked out of the room because Yzma just got tired of listening to her bullshit. And instead of her going to another part of the facility, she's the next door neighbor on the other side of the wall, and is Cruella DeVille.
Oh my God.
And Yzma is just bitching all the time about her sensitive nose and her allergies, and and the dogs. Oh,
gotcha.
So we're gonna get to that next week. That's gonna be pretty fun. But yeah, there's games going on all over the place in our world. It sucks that one of yours got deflated, but you got to pay the bills, and this isn't doing that.
Yeah, this is definitely isn't doing it. But it's one of those things. I had like 2 players who were really, really invested and like in the story and stuff like that. Obviously Tyler's the ultimate invested player.
Yeah.
So I felt really bad having to cancel it, but
life. That's how it goes.
Life. Games.
We'll get you back into rotation at some point.
Yeah, games cancel all the time. And like if you're listening at home and a game of yours just is petering out or stops because of someone, just trust me, it's totally.
Pick up the phone and dial 999. I want my game back.
Yeah,
and one of our people will be on the other side to answer your call.
Yeah,
share your woes.
It's totally normal. That happens all the time.
Yep, common as dirt.
So don't feel bad. Don't take it personally. It's like totally normal.
Unless you're me, I take it personal as hell.
How many years has it been? You still take it personally?
Yeah, well,
So yeah, let's get on to the topic.
What is the topic? Why are we here?
Exploration mode.
Exploration mode.
So the core rule book basically breaks up 3 modes of play, and one of them is in seconds, the other one is in days, and whatever lies in between is exploration mode.
Okay, I'm willing to roll with that definition for the moment.
Okay.
And then I'm going to smash it to pieces as this conversation goes on.
So the book, in my opinion, kind of poorly defines these modes to begin with. It it assumes that the players and the DM will just kind of fill in the gaps in between, and we often do. But one of the things that really strikes me is, Pathfinder and the Dungeons and Dragons and all the games before it in this lineage are all kind of built on combat.
Hmm.
So the majority of our core rule book is combat rules. Now, Pathfinder Second Edition is awesome in that it has a bunch of feats and a feat system that allows players to play classes that aren't just focused on combat. They've bifurcated feats for combat and feats for skills so that you can have your cake and eat it too, which is pretty rad. And it's definitely a great improvement on the system. But what it's done is it's kind of created two modes of play within exploration mode. You have dungeon crawling mode, which is what all the rules for exploration mode give you.
Love that.
And then mode. Yeah, it's dungeon crawling mode. That's what it is.
It's almost pejorative. I love it.
Well, I mean, I love dungeon crawling mode. Speaking about games we're playing, I just started another game with Oliver and Fam, and he's running
that's that Abomination Vaults
Abomination
one,
Vaults.
isn't it?
Yeah, he's running Abomination Vaults, but he's running it old school style where it's a dungeon crawl. Abomination Vaults is a dungeon crawl. And he's like printed out all the maps and he's running it as a dungeon crawler RPG. Like
the rules of PF2E, but it feels like a first edition.
Oh, I don't know about that so much, but I think you and I are we're in this bubble. We're in this narrative bubble here in Portland where all the games and all of our friends that we play in, we're all so narratively focused that we get frustrated with rules about like avoiding notice and defending and the little bonuses it gives us. But in this game with Oliver, we're playing a dungeon crawl. It's like the entire game we're jumping in between the combat mode and the exploration mode, but that specific kind of exploration mode where you're crawling through a dungeon, where you're taking, action is measured in minutes, maybe tens of minutes, maybe an hour, but that's about it. You don't just sit in the dungeon for 10 or 15 minutes unless you're waiting to start a trap or something.
Sure. It almost sounds like you're talking about the difference between putting together a strategy and executing that strategy tactically. So when I hear you say, I'm in a dungeon crawl, I immediately think of square by square tactical execution of a strategy. And that's kind of what D&D has traditionally been all these years. But now that we have these multiple modes like downtime mode, what's the one we're talking about today? Exploration mode. There are different points of emphasis that are more strategic and less tactical, I think. Sort of like those two modes, exploration and downtime, seem to be creating the doors that you can open, step through, and get tactical with whatever you just picked up as a result of your non-encounter mode decision making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So tactics versus strategy, that's how my brain resolves the difference between those two modes.
Well, to me, it's like the difference between crawling through a dungeon square by square, but not in combat. And we're not tracking time in hard 6-second increments.
Sure.
But we're also not traveling the land or gathering information in a city or doing an investigation of some sort.
Sure.
And to me, when I look at the rules of the game and the DMG rules, I find that almost all of them are written for the dungeon delving. There are very few
There's
hard
a heavy
rules.
emphasis on it. Yeah, for sure.
There are very few hard rules that give you bonuses and stuff like that are coded into the game that are for non-dungeon crawl. And that's okay.
Yeah, and I think that was yes, I agree. And yes, I think that was a deliberate design choice. And I also think it's the right design choice, even though it's not playing to my preference, because it's still fairly early in the life cycle of this particular edition. You got to get the tactical rule set first before we can start figuring out what exploration activities you can do in a gambling casino, let's say.
I agree with that. I also think that they should have, and I'm not here to just shit talk the creation of design and stuff like that. That's not my goal. But what I'm seeing is a clear lack in the design space of rules, or not even rule. We don't even need mechanical rules, but we just need some sort of support, I think, for exploration mode, or at least I would really have liked them to have broken up these modes of play more granular and came up with a like I said, a dungeon crawling mode where where you're measuring time in minutes or tens of minutes, and everything else between that and downtime. And I understand why they wouldn't. I understand why they may not want to do that, because it creates too many sections. It creates too much granularity in the game. And
There's enough analysis paralysis.
Yeah, it makes it hard to run. But by combining these things together, it also makes it confusing.
I'm going to need to hear some examples on what you're seeing, because as I listen to you talk, and this is strangely enough, this is the first time I'm hearing some of these ideas come out of your mouth. It seems that there is something that exploration mode should provide that you cannot get in encounter mode. So it has to come from exploration mode. However, there's the 300-mile trek across a hex map that exploration mode accounts for. It's codified. It's in here. You have everything you need to know to successfully do a hex crawl. But somewhere between that and rolling for initiative and jumping into encounter mode, there's a space between that. That's a large enough design space that it sounds like you feel is discrete and separate from exploration mode. And I'm curious to hear more about that.
My players are trying to find boat passage.
Okay.
They're in the city of...
Clearly exploration mode.
They're in the city of Nex. Players themselves have never actually ridden a boat before. So I have them all roll a check to gather information.
Sure.
And almost all of them go their little merry ways, go gather that information. And I ask them how they're gathering the information, and they roll their checks, and I describe how successful they are. They all end up meeting at the same place, which is basically a call board for what ships are going where and when, and if they're willing passengers. One of the players is a little more sharky and decides to poke on the edges of what is...
Watching this, you know who you are.
Yes. Poke on around the edges of what isn't obvious, which I think is cool. So we kind of go down that little tangent for a while. They meet two interesting characters, one of which is related to another figure that they've been, another character that they've been interacting with for a long time. So we roll some, they do their spiel and they ask some questions. The player decides to lie to them about some key information, have them do some discrete deception checks, so on and so forth. And then they arrive back to the party with some interesting information. That's all exploration mode? Or is it
technically absolutely
downtime?
No, downtime. I think if I'm reading the chapter right, downtime is about it feels like downtime mode is specifically there to enhance something, whether it's your own character's ability to do something better, or like a castle you're building. You're increasing, you're shoring up your the HQ's defenses. There's an increase in ability somewhere in downtime mode by the time you're done. Exploration mode isn't that. Exploration mode is I'm looking for answers for questions. Downtime seems to be I'm building something. An encounter is I really want to hit this guy on the head. So I think those are the three broadly defined modes.
Got it.
And somewhere between answers to questions and hit that guy on the head, that sounds like where you're living right now with your group in this example. And I 100% agree with you that the language is deliberately vague in many of these chapters. How many times as you went through this core book, just by itself, forget about all the other books, just this one, where you came across a language that said, we deliberately didn't define this ability so that the GM can have the freedom to put whatever read they want on it.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. It's almost like a rules-like game, but 600 pages. The joke's on us. So exploration mode is it's fuzzy. what's the point? I mean, where is the value in exploration mode? Is my question as a player and as a GM. Because as a GM, if I'm going to use it, I can't have my players falling asleep at the table. So how do I use exploration mode in a way that's meaningful for other players?
Well, I mean, the vast majority of the game, like if you were to graph the amount of playtime in each mode actually at the table, the vast majority of the game is an exploration.
Depending on your GMs.
Oh, yeah.
I've had
depends
GMs,
on your table.
Yeah.
Definitely depends on your table. At our tables, it is like 90%. We've gone days where we never have an encounter.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I love me some encounters, but even I'm finding now, even as me, Robert, the encounter lover, like I don't run encounters all day long sometimes for an entire session, which is
that's not the Robert I met 6 years ago.
I know. It's crazy.
It's weird when I hear you say, "Hey, I like the game." My first thought is, "Well, I wonder what the combat was like."
Yeah.
And then you'll come around and go, "Oh, wait, there was no combat." And then I'll wonder, "Who are you?" And then I'll rip your mask off and you'll be like, "I was the bard the whole time." And yeah.
So, but like, so in the example I gave, there was no avoiding notice. There was no constantly detecting magic. There was no scout. There was no repeat a spell. There was investigate, but do I just give all of the players the bonuses for those investigates?
Yeah.
Like, how mechanical do we want to make this? And there is a sidebar, if I remember correctly, in the adventuring section that basically says, oh, and sometimes your players do non-dungeon crawling things, and you should...
Page 480?
Yeah, exploration activities. Oh, and, you know, they might do these other things. But, like... But the game designers seem to assume...
That was a great little Mickey Mouse that you just did there, by the way. I want to call that out.
The game designers assume that you're going to be crawling through dungeons 24/7. And if you go back to a city to cash out your loot, do something, you're just going to be like, I would like to gather information. I have rolled a dice. I have succeeded in gathering information. The DM describes to you exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you very much. All right, back to the dungeon. And like, that's not how most people play games anymore.
Sure. Yeah. Let's try that again. Exploration mode is an attempt to codify something that's I'm not fully convinced it needed to be codified. Like, for instance, I just picked up the Kingmaker Adventure Path, and there's I don't even know how many books that they sell alongside it. But like, this bad boy right here is the Adventure Path itself with everything that was in the Kingmaker set to begin with, way back when it came out in 1E. But they also have these little guys here, these little supplemental books that are hellaciously priced, but they're gorgeous anyways, and I will buy them all anyways.
They're very pretty.
Anyhow, these have different exploration mode options in them, and they're buried, so you got to go through the index to find them. Like, this book right here has 2 instances of exploration mode options, and there's like, I don't know, 100 pages between the two. One's on page 17 and the other one is way in the back. Anyhow, all that is to say, it feels to me like there's this this attempt to split the design space into thirds. There's the encounter design space, the exploration design space, and the downtime design space, and I can't think of a fourth. That quasi combination thing we were talking about earlier, notwithstanding, I can't rationally come up with a fourth. So what encounter makes sense. You roll initiative, you have different skills that put you into the situation at different strengths and weaknesses. And so that helps to create your strategy going in and what tactics you can apply during the 3 rounds it takes to, put this guy on the ground, whoever it is. So all of that makes sense because D&D has been doing this, and then other systems before that for decades. But this strange new exploration space, I'm not convinced it's interesting enough to codify it. I mean, you just gave a bunch of examples on activities you can do. I'm just not seeing the. I'm not seeing yet that enough of the design space for the exploration mode has been done in an interesting enough way.
Yeah.
So exploration mode seems to be designed to get you into encounter mode. You know, you run around, you ask your questions, you get your answers, and that leads to some kind of combat. There's a direct line between like downtime to exploration mode to encounter mode. At least that's what I've seen. I don't know that whole. I don't get it. I need somebody to explain it to me.
I guess the question you have to ask at the end of the day, like, is the plot of your story, is the plot of the story everyone's trying to tell, is it fundamentally a plot and story driven by physical conflict, a la encounter mode? Or is it driven by exploration? Is it driven by social conflict? And I've read sections of the book that say, like, you can have social encounters, basically, where two people roll off diplomacy checks and they have various successes.
Sure, yeah, there's various subsystems that allow for stuff like that.
And we can go over those subsystems in the future. But fundamentally, the game, like, fundamentally, you have to ask the question, what is the game about? Is the game the story that you and all your friends are trying to tell about conquering some painfully evil and bad dude who you eventually have to murder? Or is it about something deeper and more interesting? Is it a story? Are you trying to tell a story? You know, at the end of the day, is this a power fantasy a power fantasy that is whose empowerment comes from physical conflict? Or is it a story about empowerment through non-physical conflict? Or is it a story about empowerment through something besides conflict?
Sure. I think everything that you've just stated can be an exploration story. Everything you've just stated can just as easily be framed as an encounter story. I'm not sure it can be framed as a downtime story. I'm sure it could. I just wouldn't know how. It's a little abstract for me to put my brain in that area.
The BCs and the bad guys send letters to each other and diplomatically figure everything out over the course of months.
Yeah, right. It takes X number of days for this horse messenger to get over to this next town.
Yeah. What are you doing in the meantime?
Push-ups, man. I need that +1 to strength. But yeah, I mean, it's just the different modes frame your story. Sure, I'll grant you that. What would Lord of the Rings look like if it was just an encounter story and there wasn't a whole lot of exploration? That's tough because it's so much exploration. There's so much globetrotting in that story.
Yeah.
But we clearly know where the encounters begin and end. Okay, well, what about all the other gray space between encounter modes?
Yeah.
What does exploration mode look like in the Lord of the Rings universe? Apparently, it looks like Gandalf mumbling across the grasslands, going, I'm going to repeat a spell. Is there any magic here? Is there any magic here? How about now? Is there any magic here now? I'm just going to keep recasting the spell because this is what I'm doing during exploration mode. Meanwhile, Boromir is like, are we there yet? We're moving half speed so you can cast Detect Magic every 10 feet. And the whole time Boromir is having that conversation, he's got a shield over his head, racing across the grasslands. This is his encounter mode.
Yeah.
It just feels so goofy and artificial. And I know it's not intended to be that way. But every time I've ever seen this mode at a table, in our group plus some others in like organized play, it's the same actions over and over. The rogue is always going to pick the one that gives him, the
That's
quicker
good for the
react in combat. The wizard's always going to do the one that can sense, the magic, whatever. There are certain targeted actions that almost make it feel artificially predetermined.
Okay, so two things. One, in a system where these are meant for dungeon crawling, those make more sense because no one can hold a shield over their head for hours on end on horseback. But if you're in a tense situation, if you're dungeon crawling, or if you're in a dangerous area and you could be attacked at any moment, and you know that, the characters know that, the plot knows that, then it makes perfect sense for you to hold your shield up.
Yes.
And I think the difference maybe, I just literally just had this thought, so it could be just totally fucking
Bring
stupid.
it out.
Yeah. The difference could be the amount of tension in the scene. So in nearly every dungeon, in any good dungeon crawling scene, you have tension. There should be a constant through line of tension the entire time. If there's no danger, all the time at every moment. That doesn't have to be overwhelming danger, but there has to be some danger. If that's there, then there's a reason for everyone to be on edge, for everyone to be doing these paranoid activities, because that's literally what these are. Like, they're all paranoid activities. Maybe not investigate. Even then.
Paranoid activities.
Yeah. Outside of that tension, when you and your lads or whatever are just like on horses on the middle of a field and you can see in all directions, then the amount of tension is resolved, hopefully. I mean, if you're being chased, then no.
Sure, yeah.
But if not, do you see what I'm saying? Like, if there's a tension slider.
I do. And this is getting back to your what is that gray area between exploration and encounter? I can't help but think of that scene where Gandalf in Fellowship, he there's a moment where he didn't really have a thought as to the identity of the One Ring.
Mm.
And then he does a bunch of exploration mode, and then he comes back to the Shire, and then he goes into encounter mode with Frodo, shakes him, and says, "Is it still here? Do you have it?" So that entire bookended series of scenes, that montage where Gandalf races from the Shire and he's hoofing it across the grasslands. He makes it to some library in Gondor, I think. And he's going through all the scrolls, and he does that Morgan Freeman voiceover. It's like Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth geographic.
Yeah.
It was so obvious. It was great. And then he comes back. It's nothing but tension.
Mm.
And granted, Lord of the Rings kind of tells us how to feel because of the musical score, but it's tension all the way through. Like, I felt like I was in a dungeon watching Gandalf ride his horse, Shadowfax, all the way to Gondor and back. Do you still have it? It was tense the whole way through, in a way that I would expect my dungeon crawls to be, because we have a question at the beginning of the scene, beginning of the montage, and we have a question at the end, and everything in between was, is it? We think it is. Wait, conspiracy theory hat. Could this be the One Ring? If he does have it, then it can mean a lot of things. And of course, as a viewer, we know it's the One Ring because we've had The Hobbit before that. But Gandalf didn't know, and he also had The Hobbit before that.
Yeah.
So it's really cool, kind of like where can you grab that tension and write it in exploration mode in a way that makes you feel like you're in encounter mode, and it's dangerous. I don't see it yet, but I feel like that by creating thirds in the modes, it blows open the design space so they can get to it someday later. I want to see a whole APG on that mode, on exploration mode.
Is that even something they can write? Like, or is it just a book of advice on how to write a good story?
Maybe. I mean, every system seems to have one of those these days. Cthulhu's got a little leather book on how to run Cthulhu games, and it has all kinds of stuff like that. The Game Mastery Guide, the DMG, and Dungeons and Dragons. It's just chock-a-block full of advice on how to do things, including encounter mode. I just personally didn't find it super useful.
Yeah, I didn't.
In the PF2E version.
I mean, okay, so I did pull a couple quotes that I thought were really interesting.
What do you got?
Let's see here. DMG, time slows down the more detail you give. I thought that was really interesting. And it's not something I've ever really thought about.
Sure.
But it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
The more you describe an area or a place, the more words the DM, the narrator, gives to the location, the more importance it is given in the minds of the player. And as they begin to take in information, their perception of time slows down.
Totally. Yep.
That makes perfect sense to me. But I never really thought of it until now.
Yeah, I like to think of that as like a sound engineer, and they have all the little dials. If you dial up the description and the exposition, you're dialing down the pacing, and you're fucking around with time at that point, and a bunch of other stuff. You can slow a story way down until like zero movement, and still keep that tension based on the reveals in the what's the phrase? The propositional content. Anytime you put forth new ideas, you propose. If there's a proposition in that, the players are going to sit up, take notice, and go, "Oh, how do I consume that in a way that makes my character stand out and go do things that are interesting?" Yeah, you can totally mess around with time.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that D&D lives in the fourth dimension, you know?
Yep.
But I've never really. So I guess now that I'm thinking on it, I haven't really DM'd as much as I think I have. Like I perceive myself to have more experience DMing than I've been a player for most of my games. And it's just kind of amazing to me the little tidbits we can learn about that, even if we have a saying that some old wizened D&D player gave it to us on high, years ago. Yeah. So the other quote that I wrote down was, if the group isn't in any danger and they spend all their time, you might allow them to auto-succeed or use the perception roll to see how long it takes for them to find everything. So it is a reasonable assumption that if you and I spend the next 5 hours going over every item in this room, every detail and every corner, we would there's no foreseeable reason why we wouldn't find something unless it was perfectly deliberately hidden. So like a secret door, a secret thing. But if it wasn't deliberately hidden in that way, we would be able to find everything in the room.
Maybe. I'm a bit of an idiot sometimes, and I get tunnel vision. So I tend to look at the same thing 3 times and then see it for the first time at that third time.
Oh my God.
So I think there's arguments for and against, but I see your point. The more time you spend as a group of adventurers, presumably proficient individuals, that given enough time, they'll find the thing they're looking for, or they'll get the result they're looking for, assuming that there isn't an imminent threat component involved.
I mean, and that's what I think the quote. That's the assumption.
Yeah.
That there's no imminent threat. Remember that through line of tension, of danger that I talked about? That through line is dead. It's been punctuated. So the players can chill and really take their time with something. It kind of reminds me of that scene when we were investigating the first room in the murder hotel. Spoilers in what's it called? The Edgewatch game.
Mm-hmm.
We were in one of the rooms and there was like holes in the bottom of the table or the bottom of
the bed.
The bed. Yeah. And to me, that was like, okay, there's something else going on in here that we need to find.
That was a fun moment.
Spend enough time.
Because we didn't know that was a murder hotel at that point. It was just the last place some of our contacts were noticed.
Yeah.
And yeah. Yeah. So again, like crawling under a bed, getting on your back and looking up, and you see holes there. I would argue that's not like normal. Most people, when they crawl under a bed, they're doing it on their bellies. And most of their attention is focused on the floor area. But you flipped up and you got to see the entire, like the world from a different vantage point. That's not really in exploration mode. That was just a thing you said you were specifically.
Yeah,
that's different than what you were doing seconds before.
So I guess the question we would have to ask is that a level of abstraction separate from if I spend 5 hours in this room, I will find all the hidden things? If you spent 5 hours investing in that room, do you think it would eventually flip the bed over? You could flip the bed over?
I mean, it's a hotel and there's like, dozens of other rooms as well. Do you do it to every room?
That's true.
Do you do it to every door? Do you do it to the underside of every toilet seat? I would argue no. That's a CSI team's job.
But we're just adventurers. The CSI team.
No, we're just first on the scene and we mess it up.
That's fair. That's fair.
But if we're talking about a class that's specific to that, like investigator, sure, I'll buy that. But if we're just talking like a knuckle dragging alchemist that likes to blow stuff up,
what? A knuckle dragging alchemist
that likes to blow stuff up. I'm not going to give them the same benefit of the doubt as I would an investigator in that particular exploration type activity.
Fair. The alchemist would probably just blow the bed up.
Well, yeah. And then, it would flip over and you'd see the holes and mystery solved. It was the bar the whole time. I'm
going to write an entire non-podcast show episode, person talking at the camera about my thoughts and opinions on The Alchemist. It is so...
He has feelings.
It is... Alchemist
he has big feelings.
Alchemist was my baby in first edition. I loved Alchemist. It was one of my favorite classes. It was so unique.
We're doing this, aren't we?
Straddled the perfect line.
We're doing it.
it straddles the line between fantasy and science that I always loved because it had just enough zhuzh, just enough magic in there to make me not roll my eyes and be like, oh, you're bringing guns and gears into my Dungeons and Dragons. You know what I mean?
Thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, actually, guns.
Not ironic.
I've changed my mind on the guns and gears thing. I'm actually becoming a fan, because of the implementation in Pathfinder Second Edition specifically. Anyway, and then because of Second Edition's toolkit, I'm basically giving the whole video at this point. There's a Pathfinder Second Edition has a presentation problem. They have a problem. The way that their system is designed, it's unique and it's hard to present in a way that makes sense. That's easy to read, easy to understand. It's not a system.
Are you talking about the organization of where to find the answers to your questions in the book?
Yes. The actual design of the game, the way feats are now designed, the modularity has made it very incompatible with books in general.
I never thought about it that way.
Oh yeah. And the Alchemist is the biggest example of that failing.
It's a big offender. Yeah. Where all the alchemical information is in the book.
It's just so, they break so many rules and assumptions. So mechanically on a math basis, the Alchemist is perfectly fine. For the most part, there's one or two weird things that I'll cover in that video that are like, really guys? I'm sure that's
a distinction worth making. So you're not poo-pooing the actual Alchemist class so much as I can't play one because I can't get all the information I need.
I'm poo-pooing the Alchemist class because I think that the class is designed in a way that's hard to understand. And that frustrates me because I really want to play one and I've tried to play one and it's frustrating to play.
I remember you and Alex both gave it like a rock solid shot and yeah.
So I'm going to redesign it.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing will change, but the way the information is presented, I'm going to try and do better. I'm not saying I'm not like game design. There's a person out there who designed the Alchemist. I'm not shitting on you right now. You had a monumentally difficult job, especially within the confines of this game. Very difficult, full props, but I want to give it a crack. That's all.
I feel like you're channeling Kronk from last week. I'm going to redesign the Alchemist class. I'm not going to change a single thing.
I'm not. I'm going to redesign the Alchemist class and I'm not going to change a single thing. It will mechanically function the exact same way. Maybe. Hopefully. Okay. My goal is to redesign it, but change as little as possible.
You feel better, Boo Boo? You got all that off your chest?
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
It's been bubbling for a while.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
What does that have to do with exploration mode?
That's a good question. That was a tangent. Like no other.
A little bit.
Yeah.
That's okay. You're forgiven.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Exploration mode. We were talking about the perception and stuff like that, and then the person blowing up the bed. At the end of the day, I want to say that exploration mode could be broken up into two parts. And I think if you're a DM, you may want to consider thinking about that way just to bring back the verisimilitude. Because I think the through line about what we were talking about with the traveling along the plains, shield up and casting magic the whole time, is that those actions kill the verisimilitude of that moment because there's no tension to warrant those paranoid activities. So I guess as a DM,
there's the fatigue mechanic, which doesn't always get put in.
Yeah.
But that's us. That's not the game.
Yeah, that's us. That's not the game. I mean, everyone is imperfect. I'm definitely not perfect. And the way we run our game can never be, this is obviously a maxim. You probably could play the game perfectly as it was designed in all spheres, but I don't think most people can or do, or even would want to. In a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, I think.
Yeah.
I kind of want to get back to the idea of the exploration mode being a means to an end. Feels like exploration mode dips into encounter mode. You shift from one to the other, one to the other, one to the other. You don't wake up in the morning and then there's encounter mode unless you got ambushed.
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning and then you plan your exploration mode. and then you go in search of encounter mode. And it seems like exploration mode has a series of activities attached to it that gets you closer to encounter mode. So when I see page in the book, there we are. When I see exploration mode towards combat, that's what it was. Okay, exploration mode leads to combat. In the as of the the Kingmaker campaign, it can also lead to camping. So camping is the last thing you do during an actual adventuring day, right? And then if you get ambushed while you're in counter mode, but while you are encamped, you've just entered a new state of play. And there are new tags on different abilities and actions as of this book right here that say campsite on them. These are all actions that you can do as part of your exploration mode activities. So if we're using exploration mode as a means to unlock other actions that are location based, it makes me wonder if there's going to be a series of exploration modes that lead towards, like, say, a gambling den. You know, if these are all the things that you can do in exploration mode that lead to the camping activities, what might lead to the gambling activities or to other location-based activities?
Oh man, I can't wait for Paizo to come out with exploration mode activities in a brothel. What was that third edition book?
I think that's going to be an infinite product.
What was that third edition book?
The Book of Erotic Fantasy.
The Book of Erotic Fantasy.
Yeah.
I remember as a fucking 14-year-old, that thing was fascinating.
Oh yeah, yeah. Everything I need to learn about life, I learned in kindergarten, and the Book of Erotic Fantasy. And the Book of Vile Darkness, but we don't talk about those days.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man.
It just feels like the design space hasn't been exploited to its fullest extent, which makes sense because this game's only been out a few years. And with all the books they've been pumping out, it almost all supports character creation and encounter mode. There's not a whole ton of interesting stuff yet to be done in exploration mode that I've uncovered.
Yeah. That's
probably my failing more than anything else.
Stuff that we've uncovered that is defined. Because I still want to go back to the beginning of our talk where we realized that the vast majority of stuff we've done is in exploration. The vast majority of games, I think, are at least 50% in exploration, if not more.
But we don't mechanize
exactly, and that's okay.
We keep it like we treat it like a rules light game because I need the pacing to pick up. If people are falling asleep at my table because everybody's in search of that +1 to whatever they know they're going to need when round one of combat, inevitably happens. It just feels so predetermined and such an empty experience for me. And yet bogging people down on information checks, just give me the narrative. Tell me what you're doing and how you're doing it. We don't have to talk about +1s and -1s. But if we are going to go there, I want a book this size full of options for exploration. That's my own personal ask. And who knows, maybe it's coming. I don't know. I think it's a design space where we've seen maybe 5% of the design in it. I just got to be more patient than I am. But I'm not going to use it.
Yeah.
Like in my games when I GM, I'm not using the mechanical version of exploration mode. I'll just keep telling the story. And we're all in exploration mode. And if you give me a good enough story about how you're stealthing around, I'll slip you that +1 to your initiative or whatever. But other than that, I think it's just kind of like a waste of time at the table.
If you ran this Kingmaker game, would you include these mechanics?
100%. And this is something we didn't talk about, and I'm glad you brought that up. Hex crawls are sort of the asterisk to everything I say. If you do a hex crawl, like Kingmaker is a hex crawl, the Tomb of Annihilation for 5e D&D, it's
hex crawl sandbox.
That sort of thing.
I have that book.
Then we're leaning into more of a Excel spreadsheet sort of experience at the table where we're keeping records of things, and that's part of the game, as
And that
opposed
can be
to we're
fun.
playing Doom, where it's a first person shooter going through the dungeon.
Yeah, that could be fun. Like if you
It
come
can,
to
if
the
that's-
table,
yeah.
and that's the game everyone has agreed to play
Mhm.
in their session
It's
zero.
100% a
callback.
session zero thing. Yeah.
Yeah, if that's the game you're there to play, then that would be awesome.
Yeah,
But
and
if
it's
it's
such a specific thing, which is why I didn't think to bring it up until you asked. I don't care about exploration mode as a discrete mechanized construct. As a design space, it makes my brain light up because there's so many things that can be done with it. And the segue into the camping rules is really cool. I dig it, and I can see using it. I want more. So if Paizo is going to come out with another Lost Omens book, God, I wish it would. No, it couldn't be Lost Omens. It would have to be one of the red books because I just want more exploration mode in a form I can access, and I don't have to go to the archives of Nethys to be able to like read the list of things I can do.
Yeah,
I think that would be super cool.
That's another thing that happened in Pathfinder First Edition that's slowly starting to creep into Second Edition, where there's this idea that once a book has codified an action, you can no longer not use that rule as the codified version of it. So like players would assume they could do things until some random splat book would come out and it lists that thing they love doing, that cool little thing they love doing, or just a random thing that they do often, but they don't realize they're doing. Now they list that as an ability, or they gate that doing that thing behind a feat. And all of a sudden the rules don't make sense. And obviously you would just hand wave and house rule that Oblivion. But if we begin, I guess what I'm trying to get at is if we begin codifying these in these exploration mode activities, then we actually begin to eat up some of the space at the actual table around exploration. I would almost prefer a book of advice on.
You mean it kills pacing?
Not just so much that it kills pacing, but that it locks people into the mentality of thinking, oh, if I want to go, I don't know,
300 miles at half speed.
No, not that. If I want to go like, here's a good example. If I want to go find a date at a bar, normally most people would just roll a diplomacy check or something like that. I don't know. All you bards out there, I know, that's all you do. Exploration mode, downtime. The first thing to do is I'm going to go find a girlfriend or whatever.
Wine, women, and song.
Yeah. But once rules come out for that kind of thing, defined rules in a book somewhere, a lot of people get locked into the idea that they just can't roll the diplomacy check anymore. They have to go use these rules for this thing. And if we keep making rules for each individual thing, we might end up with another game that's way too bloated.
Yeah,
with mechanics like First Edition. I love you, First Edition. You're my one. You're my first love.
You're the one that got away.
So just I say that with so much love.
Yeah, I mean, like how do you make money in Second Edition? It's tied to this conversation. There's a mechanic for it, and you can't just really go haggle your new wages. Kind of codified. So we have rules for your downtime activity of earning an income based on whatever skill you're doing it with.
Yeah.
Whereas in the old days, you just make assumptions and try to browbeat your GM until they give you what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to make 500 gold tonight by, I don't know, whatever, XYZ activity. But yeah, it's kind of like the more rules that come out, the more they codify any game, the more restrictive it gets downstream. And you can tell in the language they use in these books when they say, we're not defining the absolute parameters of this ability that your character can have. And we're doing it so you can have that conversation with your GM. So it'll fit your table. So it'll fit your table.
Yeah.
So it'll fit your table. It always comes back to, we're not going to make a ruling on it. Why don't you guys do it?
And it's not because they're
I don't hate that.
Yeah, I don't either. It's not because they're trying to save some space for later books, which is the cynical way to look at that. Mm-hmm. It's because they want the game to be adaptable.
Sure.
The game is modular. The game is adaptable.
It's modern game design in the spirit of a rules light system.
Yeah.
But it's 600 plus pages plus all the other bullshit they write, which I will buy it all, and I have to this day.
I mean, like the occult, like I think a good example of what I would like on exploration mode is something like the occult book, where half of the book is.
You mean like first edition occult book?
No, I'm talking about this occult book.
Dark Archives.
Dark Archives. Yeah. So like Dark Archives was a quarter of it was adventures or something like that. A quarter of it was just flavor. And then another quarter of it was, the classes.
Yeah.
And then the last quarter was like this cool combination between these occult flavors and some little, it's almost like the mechanics weren't codified mechanics on how to do a thing. It was an inspiration. Like, hey, here's some ideas of how you could mechanize or give mechanics to these ideas.
It's like a writing exercise.
Exactly. And I would love to see more books like that.
Yeah.
With no classes. Forget the classes. Pathfinder Second Edition has enough classes. I've said it.
Oh, that hurts a little.
I've said it. All right. I'm done. Stop. I know you want to print money, and the way you do that is by printing classes.
I think you've just alienated everybody that wants a shaman and an inquisitor yesterday.
I know. Yeah. But if you keep printing classes, we're going to get into some serious rules bloat that I'm not here for. It's going to start feeling like first edition.
I mean, it will far enough down the line.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it has yet?
Yeah, we're almost already there. 22 classes. We have 22 classes.
And it feels bloated?
It's beginning to feel, if it weren't for Nethies and all the hard work they're doing, go support their Patreon. And all the hard work they're doing in order to like keep the game kind of like organized in a way. This goes back to my earlier point about the way the game is designed. Like the nuts and bolts of the game aren't meant for paper. That was kind of beginning to become painfully obvious in first edition, but second edition with the modularity of everything, things are really starting to begin to fray.
All right.
With a number of options you have and the number of hidden trees of skills you have.
The word bloat is where I'm tripping up.
Yeah.
I'm still not sure I understand what you mean when you use the term bloat. I know people use it all the time on the message boards. There's rules bloat all over the place. When I hear you say bloat, you're talking about our ability to access the information.
Yeah.
Across the 7,000 books that are in print.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But anyway, I mean, it's all for free online. Go look at it. But what I'm trying to get at is I think the best thing they can do for exploration mode is print more books that are themed around a specific style of adventure, a Cthulhu-esque adventure. What do they call? What do they call that? What's the name of it?
Horror?
Not horror, but like cosmic horror.
Okay.
Like I would love to see a cosmic horror book. I would love to see a romance style book. I would love to see a war book where you're playing this war saga, like almost like they're genres.
Kind of doing that right now, though.
I know, and that's why I'm
you
saying
want more
like,
Dark Archives,
I
more
want
Guns
more
and
of that.
Gears, more
Without-
Secrets of Magic.
I don't say Guns and Gears is tiptoeing into that. Secrets of Magic is definitely not that. But Dark Archive is that. I just want to see those books without classes. You can give me archetypes. Archetypes are great. Archetypes are enough. It's a good balance. But
Classes sell books.
But classes sell books. Classes print money. I understand you need to print money. I get that.
Yeah, the Kineticist that they did the playtest for and is coming out. And whatever our feelings aside, that's
wants
the
to play
only
Avatar.
class in that book coming up. So in the core book, you had X number of classes. In each subsequent book, you had like half again that number of classes. And now in this new Rage of Elements book coming out mid next year, it's a single class for the entire book. So it definitely feels like there was a conscious decision to slow roll the classes now. So that concern you have about bloat, that's even the word we're looking for. I think they're dealing with that. They're considering it. They're considering it and they're taking action. Words are hard tonight. I can't talk.
They are.
So I think that's good. I'd be happy with from here on out a class for a chunky book the size of maybe, I don't know, APG type stuff. And then everything else you said, just fill up all the rest from cover to cover full of that kind of stuff.
And Book of the Dead was a good example of that too. Now that I'm looking at
of course.
Book of the Dead was an excellent example of that. There's no classes in it, but there was a bunch of archetypes and options to make your characters undead.
Yeah.
and how to fight undead.
Uh-huh.
And those are the kind of books that I think speak really well to exploration mode. They give you
character options, there's monsters, and there's a sample adventure in there. And there's
flavor.
There's
the flavor.
Fourth wall breaking by Gab himself as he writes his passive aggressive comments on every other page. That helps us like understand the flavoring of what we're consuming. And I think that was just Book of the Dead it might be my favorite book in the PF2E line.
Yeah.
Not just because I love undead and I'm a Ravenloft fan from way back, but it was just so artfully constructed and consistent. My only complaint is when they released the battle cards, you can't see the images because they used a dark green background behind the artwork. And I can't for the life of me figure out how that ever got out of the office.
Yeah, well. You have any final thoughts?
Final thoughts, man. I don't even know if I have any real first thoughts.
I think we're just about at an hour, so.
Feels like a hot mess right now.
Yeah.
I think I'm optimistic. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm really optimistic because I know it can be done. And those folks at Paizo and for that matter, the
Infinites.
What do you work on contract, but they don't actually work?
Oh, I was thinking of like the people on Paizo Infinite.
The contract workers.
Yeah.
Words are fucking hard.
Words are hard tonight.
Anyhow, they're all doing exceptional work. And I love it all. I own all of these books. I just get so passionate. And when I get frustrated, it's not me saying this is a shitty rule. This isn't a shitty a mode of play. Just because I don't use exploration mode doesn't mean other people shouldn't. It just means I haven't figured out a way to make it work for my table in a way that doesn't interrupt all the other things that are currently working. I think
it's important to clarify. You use exploration mode all the time, but you don't use any codified system.
I don't use it the way it seems to be intended, and in the various books in which it's brought up.
I think I would say that if you're when you run exploration mode, which is most of the time in a game, my advice would be to constantly consider tension. Am I trying to create tension right now, or am I not? That will, that's a big fork in the road, because if there's tension going on, if there's life or death tension, which is a more serious form of tension, then consider using some of these rules mechanics. If you feel like something's about to break out into combat, like the player's about to turn a corner and discover some monsters, maybe consider asking your players what they're doing in that moment. But if there's no tension, forget these rules. Just let it flow. Let the players tell you what they want to do, and let the game live in the fourth dimension and just flow in the direction that you're trying to get it to go to.
Let the game live in the fourth dimension.
Yeah.
I'm going to be sitting on that one for a while.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's probably it. I think we're just about an hour.
Yeah. This topic is a bit of a hot mess at the moment. And I think that's representative of just where it is in its current state of design. That's my personal thoughts. And when I talk to other people, I keep circling back to that. People aren't entirely sure what to do during exploration. When I tell them at my table, they'll give me looks like, wait, haven't we already been doing that? Well, yeah, but now you get a +1 going into combat. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but now you can find a secret door if you do that. And yeah, now you can run across the entire map with your shield over your head and get that +1 to your AC.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. It's an artificial construct for something that used to feel natural. And I haven't acclimated to it yet. I have a lot to learn.
On that note, I want to thank everyone at home for listening to our ramblings. We just hit 30 subscribers.
30 subscribers. Woo! That's more than a dozen, right?
Almost all of our friends and family.
Baker's dozen?
There's a couple of them out there that are unique individuals.
My mom hasn't signed up. I know that for a fact.
We want to thank you so much for listening to us.
Maybe she'll be 31.
We really appreciate it. We're putting our heart and soul into this. We promise. We're coming out with episodes every week now. When this comes out, we'll have started the episodes every week. We're doing 2 non-pods, 2 full podcasts every month. Eventually, when we start making any amount of money, And when we start making enough money to let us kind of hit the brakes in some of our other stuff, we're going to start making even more content for the channel and for everyone at home. So I just want to say thanks. Thank you for listening, and thank you for caring about this, because we're going to be doing this for a long time.
Yeah. And remember, caring is sharing, and sharing is caring.
Sharing is fun.
So if you know my mother, tell her she needs to subscribe.
Oh my God. Thanks, everyone. Hit like, subscribe. Check out the description for a Patreon link if you're interested in supporting the show. We've got some really cool benefits that I think you might like. We're going to start making custom content, homebrew content, stuff like that. It's pretty stoked.
Yeah, and if you want to reach out to us and tell us how you are using encounter mode, exploration mode, that would help. I need help as a GM. I've been doing this for a lot of years, but I still feel stupid when I show up to my table and get ready to run a game. Like I said earlier in this episode, I spend 24 hours at the end of every session just wondering how I managed to fuck everything up so bad. So yeah, hop in the comments, tell us how full of shit we are, or ways we can improve our own game.
Absolutely.
Or sympathize. That's good too. I accept sympathy.
All right, everyone. Catch you next time.
All right. See ya.
Peace.